Hello, and welcome to episode number 7 of The Black Feather, a Ospreys Rugby fan cast. Hi, guys.
Hi, Sam.
Hiya.
Hi, Jack. Pleased to say that this week we have managed to rustle up Jack, who is one of the co-hosts of the Red Hand Pod, which is the ultimate Ulster rugby fan pod. Listened to a couple of episodes. I think Ian is my favourite. Sorry, Jack.
Fair,
So
fair.
far, but
Ooh,
Jack is
harsh.
here.
Starting with an insult, I like it.
It's not an insult. I'm just saying you're not my favourite. You're my second one, and there's nothing wrong with being number two. Um,
Uh,
Well, you
so
didn't specify that, Sam. You just said not my
I
favourite.
just went
That
in
could
quite
have put him
harsh,
down at
didn't
the very
I?
bottom.
Sorry, Jack.
that's okay.
But thank you so much for coming on and joining us. We are not the world's most serious podcast. I'm sure you will fit right in with us. And
Oh
Jack
yeah.
is here to talk all things Ulster with us in readiness for this Friday's clash out in
Mhm.
Ireland. So, Jack, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of something about yourself?
Yeah, Grant. Yeah, no. Thanks for having me on, and obviously it's good. It's always good fun to connect with fellow rugby aficionados. If that's not going a bit step too far, but yeah. So I've been on. I've been on the Red Pod, the Red Hat Pod for a wee while now, but been an Ulster fan since probably since a little drop goal from David Humphreys way back in 2006 to win the league, which was actually against the Ospreys too. So we yeah had to throw that one in there,
Yeah, I
but
can see
yeah
why
no.
he's your second favourite, Sam, now.
So I know, but yeah, that was my kind of first kind of initiation into rugby as a kid, really. So I got out to it quite late, and then played a wee bit. But yeah, no, fell in love with the game, and obviously the playing it and watching it, the camaraderie and all the good rugby values that everyone likes to take the mick out of a little bit. But I love it, and I think it's great. And obviously, now everyone's connected a bit easier through podcasts and all the rest of it and social media. So it's great to just have the crack with folks and chat up, shooting the breeze about all things rugby and stuff. So no, yeah, I love it. So no, it's good to be on, and yeah, looking forward to a good wee chat.
And do you still play, Jack?
No, I've never found the right club in England. So as I think it was Donegal O'Callaghan once said, he said, he enjoyed playing in Worcester and he enjoyed, playing his time in England, but he said, the English are just no crack. So it was just always about, finding the right place with a good bit of crack. So
Yeah. Well,
tried a
you're
few
in
places.
Bristol. I'm sure there's some Welsh teams just across the bridge that you could get to in
Yeah.
reasonable time.
Maybe, yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, the best club I ever, well, not the best club, but the best place in England I played was up in Stoke, where I studied for my nursing degree. And the guys up north are just they're a different breed up there, and they're just class. So that was really good fun. That reminded me of home a good bit. But yeah, nothing beats just big mention to Belfast Harlequins back in Belfast, who are my sort of club. Cut my teeth there with those guys. So yeah, that has a little special wee place in the rugby memorabilia for me. But yeah, no, and then a long-suffering Ulster supporter, joined at the high time when we won the league, and then we've won nothing since. So maybe you can blame me, or you can blame the IRFU. So or David Nucifora, which all the Munster lads like to blame for their downfall. So no, it's an interesting time to be an Ulster supporter, that's for sure. Lots of ups and downs recently. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we're feeling that in Wales as well. Lots of ups and downs. Bit of a
Mm.
roller coaster at the moment. We're just waiting for one team to find a bit of stability, really, and maybe the rest can follow. And we thought maybe that was going to be us after the end of last season, but the start of this season hasn't panned out that way so far. Yeah, so I've just got a few questions for you, Jack. I'm just going to lead on this little section.
Mm.
Unless you guys had anything else, Sam and Mark, should I dive straight in? Okay, so Yeah, talking about the start of the season and the sort of form that you at Ulster and us at Ospreys are hitting. You had a relatively strong start to the season, beating last year's champions in Glasgow in round one, but you've had some mixed results since. I think you lost twice against the South African opposition, but then won against Connacht last week. So what's been working well for your team? Where do you think there's room for improvement?
Yeah, so I'd say it's been a bit of an extended pre-season, essentially with an early tour to South Africa. You're never expecting much, especially at the start of the season. It is the best time to go there, but listening to a few other pods, they made some good points that the fact of it's probably a lot harder to play the Lions and the Bulls that it is the Stormers and the Sharks at the minute. They seem to be going through differing kind of bits of form and stuff. But to start off with a win in Ravenhill is obviously massive against Glasgow. They came over and played pretty well, but we kind of matched them, and we had a very young squad. We've had quite a few retirements and things like that, and a few long-term injuries, which are still on the physio bench, so to speak. So yeah, the Glasgow game was a massive win just for the confidence in the squad because last season, as we well know, when we met last, the finish of the game is was what sort of led Ulster down a pretty dark path for the last sort of 6 to 9 months of the McFarland era. It was always about losing close matches in the last 20 or just letting opposition get back into the game when there was absolutely no chance of that, no feasible chance of that happening. But somehow we managed to lose games when we probably should have won, which is probably a similar thing to the last Ospreys game. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Richie Murphy, I think this is maybe less than 15 games in terms of his sort of tenure. It's still very early to implement his kind of style, but already there's some good signs that he is implementing a bit more of that Irish style attack that we're seeing with Ireland, a bit more intricacy and bit more ambition, basically, in the way that we play. McFarland had a very simplistic game plan, and when things went well, we did expand a bit, but it was nowhere near what it needed to be, and that kind of led to the downfall, and I think led to a bit of morale being lost in the squad, and just a malaise of it's just a lack of energy. And with Richie coming in, you obviously have the new coach bounce, and everyone gets pretty excited. And obviously beating Leinster at home towards the tail end of last season really got us in the frame for Europe and the playoffs, which was massive. And in terms of our season, that was probably the winning of our kind of season, if you want to call it that. So going into the season, there's a lot of hope and a lot of expectation, but the expectation is that we just want to get back playing well and playing some good rugby again. And it looks like we're just about starting to see things potentially click.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the tour to South Africa was tough, but I like looking at my stats as well, and seeing, I think it was about 6 tries to 4 against the Lions, and obviously the Bulls was a bit of a carpet run for the Bulls, but in terms of um, things that we're doing well, we're being quite efficient, and our attack against Connacht was quite good, and we managed 7 entries into the 22 and got 5 tries, so we did pretty well to get a good score up and against a really good Connacht side,
Mm-hmm.
and defended that lead into the final 10 minutes, which we weren't doing last year, and got out to 8 points, and then let them in just at the end to give them a losing bonus point. But I think that the sort of green shoots are there. We've just got quite a
Mm-hmm.
few injuries and a few guys that went on the emerging Ireland tour who should hopefully be back for the Ospreys game in Harry Sheridan and Cormac Isachukwu, who are two massive young players for us who are going to be making pretty big waves in terms of just representing Ulster, but potentially moving up further to get some Ireland recognition. They're being earmarked for higher honours.
Mm-hmm.
So Isachukwu is a phenomenal athlete, and Harry Sheridan is just a hard-nosed second row who, you don't want to mess with. So there's little bits of sort of glitter throughout the Ulster team that can really
Hmm.
uh, go well for us. I think it's just putting everything together in a nice, well-rounded package to
Yeah.
hopefully see us kick on and get back to playing some good rugby, and the
Mm.
results will take care of themselves
So,
after
so
that.
what is a Richie blueprint as a coach? We won't have followed him closely in Wales because he was previously with the Ireland under 20 outfit, wasn't he?
Yeah.
What's his blueprint? Is he an attacking style coach, playing open, expansive stuff? Because that's what I've seen from you so far this season.
Mm. So I'd say that Richie is I think he's quite a pragmatic coach. I think he obviously, everyone loves to say that, oh, he loves his detail. He's hot on his detail and things like that. And it's like, oh, I'd like to think so. I'd hate to see if a coach was being vague, been
Yeah.
like, yeah, just hit the ruck, somewhere there, but
Buzzwords.
yeah. So look, like I say, you got that bounce when the new guy comes in, but he he likes quick ball. He likes playing quickly. He likes getting the ball off the deck quite. When you're working with the 20s, you're working with predominantly skill set. You're not working
Mhm.
with big guys, and with the Irish boys, there's some. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to use the excuse that, oh, we just don't have the same kind of caliber of athlete of Eben Etzebeth, or the
Mhm.
guys and stuff who are just freaks of athletes. But we do have some phenomenal athletes in Ireland, and I think that you know Richie is the kind of coach who his background is all about skills coach. So he was
Mhm.
skills coach before he was head coach, and he worked with Joe Schmidt and was his sort of skills coach and kicking coach for the Irish team when Joe Schmidt got the gig for Ireland. So he's all about skills and bringing people up in terms of their skill sets. So you know, that's the obvious thing, and the other obvious thing is to obviously say that he's worked with young players before. So in terms of our development, there's I mean a lot of the kind of over that sort of over 26, 27 years of age. There's only a few of those guys, and the predominant sort of squad average age is probably under 26, So
Mhm.
in terms of the guys that we're signing, they're young, raw, but definitely talented individuals. So he's definitely going to work wonders with those younger guys, and then a bit more of a sort of game plan. He kicks a lot, so we kicked something like 29 times against Connacht, and Connacht only kicked about 17 times. So
Mhm.
really quite bizarre to have an opposition team not kick more than sort of 20 times in a game. But he kicks a lot. He likes to just have quick ball, even if it is sort of up the jumper type stuff. He'll go through the middle to earn the right to kind of go out wide. But certainly he's a guy who wants players to express themselves and try things, and
Mhm.
not be too hung up on making the odd mistake here or there, and for
Mhm.
guys to go out, enjoy themselves. And he said himself before the season started, like, this is we're not going to be perfect. We're not gonna always get the best results, but we're going to go out and we're going to play a brand that we think is going to be good to watch, and ultimately is going to be what's going to win us games, because there's no point in
Mhm.
us playing 10-man rugby, and thinking that we're going to, arm wrestle our way out of, other teams, because right now, that kind of stuff is easy to defend, and it's easy to kind of get people up for. So we're hopeful that Richie is the guy to kind of take things on, and we Ulster long-suffering Ulsters like myself always think that we're always in a transition period. So we always seem to be saying like, oh, we're just in a transition, but we never actually seem to change gear. So it's a bit
Mhm.
strange, really. But yeah,
Transition
we're
from the same rung of the ladder to another one of a similar
yes, one of
level.
those
Yeah.
optical illusions, where the stairs keep
Yeah.
leading you back to the same place that you were before, but you think you're going up the stairs, but you never actually get anywhere.
Yeah.
That's us
Yeah.
basically, mid-table, and we always think we're going to end up higher than we actually do. So yeah,
Yeah.
expectations are a bit lower this season.
No, that's good. It sounds like you're in a better place, certainly in stark contrast to your previous head coach. Um, Obviously, for those who can't remember, McFarland was dethroned after you met us last season and lost unexpectedly.
Yes.
Dan McFarland quickly found his head on the chopping block and was no more. But he was a very traditional style coach, wasn't he? That sort of seemed to reign
Mm.
with that air of authority and almost fear. Very traditional kind of coach, and you can imagine what the players
Mm.
or how the players would have responded to that kind of management. So it's nice to see a bit of a mix-up, really, and this evolution towards the more modern style of rugby setup, where it's about, pushing people up and that positive management rather than some of the more hardline stuff. So that's good to hear. Talking about personnel, you touched on a few names there that you're looking forward to seeing coming back after injury, and other, reasons that they've been put on the sideline. But I just wanted to touch on a few more, particularly looking ahead to our clash next week. Ian Henderson, obviously,
Mm.
HIA on the weekend against
Hmm.
Connacht, and it's now come out that he won't be back in time for the Ospreys game. How big of a hit is that going to be for you?
Yeah, pretty massive. Obviously Hendy just never seems to get a run of games for us. He always seems to be available for Ireland and he never seems to be available for Ulster. It's a very strange kind of thing. He comes back for a game, he'll get man of the match, and then he'll be playing against South Africa, the next week or something. So I mean, he's our guy, he's Mr. Ulster. He's the one club man and he's the level of performance goes up when he's around. Very egregious circumstances in the way in which he left the field last week. Ospreys fans may not be aware that there was a bit of a cheap shot on him by Mr. Heffernan, calling him out on this pod because I know he won't listen to it. But he yeah, it was a clear kind of shoulder barge, and maybe there wasn't contact to the head, but the TMOs and everyone says that they checked it, but there's a few clips going around social media, and the way that Hendy fell, it was like, oh, that's not a tackle, that's he's lost his legs there, so yeah, really really tough. I actually didn't know that he'd be missing. All I heard was that he has to follow the protocols. But even then, I think it's a 6 day turnaround. So even if he passed maybe one or two, I think he would still be. It's just
He
better off
has
to
been.
rest him. Like there's
He has been officially ruled out, though. I've seen an article now, stating that.
Right,
So,
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's obviously the right call because
mm,
with the head injuries, etc., you don't want to be taking any chances. And to be honest, if it's probably he's probably a little bit relieved that it's a HIA and not some other kind of niggle that he's picked
mm,
up. I don't know how many surgeries and injuries that man's had, but I think all of the limbs have probably had some form of
mm,
surgery at some point in time. So get him rested up for the next. They're probably keeping him in cotton wool as well for Ireland as well because we've got a few injuries there too. So
mm.
they'll be keeping a close eye on the injuries everywhere. So yeah,
So how
hopefully
old
he's
is
just
he now? Mid-30s? Late
Hendy's got to
30s?
be
Is he getting
30,
towards the end of his career
33,
or?
33 or so, I'd say.
Okay,
Oh
so he's still
yeah,
got a
he's
few years
he's
left.
he's kind of in that kind of twilight phase, and it was kind of close to going. There was 32, sorry, turning 33 in February, but yeah, there's always been some interest because he's a big gnarly second row. He's been compared to Itoje at times in the past, just because he's just phenomenally strong and just that ball carrier, jackal ability, calls the
Mm-hmm.
line out, scrummage as well. Like he does everything.
Hmm.
He's a mobile guy. Like he's not slow at all, but he's our leader and we kind of love him. But yeah, to have him out is is not great by any means, but hopefully with a few guys coming back from emerging Ireland, that they can fit in quite nicely actually, and we shouldn't lose a great deal. But we have guys like Al O'Connor and Kieran Treadwell who can step in and fill that kind of role, and they probably know each other better than working with Andy because he
Mm.
doesn't play that much. So at least in the second row, we shouldn't be losing too much.
I think a player can have almost too much responsibility. We've seen similar
Yeah.
with the likes of Alan Wynne-Jones in the past, where he's called our line out.
Oh,
He's been that defensive leader, and then he goes away for Wales duty or spends a period on the sideline, and suddenly you're a little bit inept, as it were, in all of
yeah,
these different elements of the game. And Ian
for
Henderson is
sure.
certainly one of those characters, isn't he? He's a leader. He's a line-out caller. He's a jumper. He's a defensive threat in the maul with his long arms going over the top. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad he's not injured, but I'm glad that he's not facing us on the weekend,
He's just
for
being
sure.
rested for this weekend. Yeah.
Thought you'd go easy on us. Um, I just want to bring up one other player, and bear with me because I'm picking names that our listeners will recognise. Some of the more obscure
Mm,
players may not register, but Jacob Stockdale looking like he's playing some of the best rugby of his career. Really enjoyed seeing his sort of attacking prowess down the wing, just running hard,
yep.
dropping that shoulder. Really attractive stuff and lovely to see. He's a player I've loved for a long time now, and I thought maybe he was past his best. But no, he's
Mm,
flying at the moment. Are you liking what you see?
I think on the red hand, or well, across Twitter really, I badger on about Jacob Stockdale till Kingdom Come because I just
Big
love the kid. I
fanboy.
just think he's oh yeah, absolutely 100% self-obsessed or self-confessed fan. He's just phenomenal. I mean, we thought at the end of the Trimble Bow era. I mean, you guys will love Tommy Bow as well, but after that, we just thought, well, Jesus, we're never going to get two wingers like that ever again. And then in come Jacob Stockdale and another injury-prone player, Robert Balakoon, who's also out injured as well. But two absolutely phenomenal athletes, and Jacob is looking he's looking mean. He's looking like he's got a plan, and he's not letting anyone get in his way for it. So I think he's playing with a wee bit of venom, and I love it. I think fair play to you, boy. Get out there and just give it your best. And um, sort of his personality is I think is meant to be he's quite self-critical. So he really, I think, gets himself. He really, criticizes himself. If he misses a tackle or if he misses an opportunity to cut inside or do something else, or he's thought, didn't know that was the wrong decision. Yada yada yada. To have someone like Richie there, I think is just going to push him on and just give him a bit of freedom as well. And he has got a bit more freedom because he's coming in more. He's getting into midfield, and people forget, he was the Irish fullback before Hugo Keenan came in and just smashed the lights out. But he was in that mold of playmaking and kind of getting involved and getting his hands on the ball more and more and more because he's one of our best players. So why would you not get him involved? For Wales, somebody like an Alex Cuthbert, you just knew that he could just come in, with his pace or with his power, he could just come in and just obliterate guys. So,
But both of those, Alex and Jacob, are confidence players, aren't they? And if they're doing well, they're
absolutely,
flying. If they're not, you can see in the way they play and the way they hold themselves on the pitch and the lines they pick and the things they commit for. They both really are very comparable in that sense. But it
100%.
does, yeah, he feels like he's on top of the world at the moment.
Mm,
It's good to get your take there. So I've just got one more question, then I'll open up to my co-host, and then we come back and do some predictions for this weekend. But to get a bit more specific about the face-off between our two teams this weekend, um, what matchups are you have you got your eye on? Are there any specific sort of battles between players or areas of the pitch that you foresee are going to be quite tasty this weekend?
Yeah, well, I was trying to think of this is going to test my knowledge now because I'm going to try and think about who's left or who's still there from last season. But one of the ones, I mean, one of the big things for us is that Stuart McCluskey should be back
Hmm.
in the 12 jersey. But obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, if Kieran Williams is still knocking about, he's not injured, is he? But he's a phenomenal player, and one I very much admire because he's kind of the opposite of a Stuart McCluskey, but he does the same job. He's just a tough guy, and he always seems to make meters where he shouldn't. So he's a quality operator in the center, and I think that's where most teams have their put your wages in the back row in the center, because those are the guys that have to make the big number of tackles or make key decisions in defense and things like that. So yeah, he's a phenomenal wee player. Um, who's he got? The wee halfback, is it Morgan Williams? He's a handy wee sniper, isn't he? Going around the fringes. But look, I grew up kind of watching, Alan Wynne Jones, Shane Williams, and Justin Tipuric, and guys like that. So there's always going to be those kind of proud kind of Welshmen in there who can definitely throw a punch or two. Obviously, Dan Edwards is in the crosshairs of Ulster's back row, I'd imagine, this weekend. Trying to get a bit of own back for last season. But just that I was in the stadium for that unfortunate loss last year at Liberty Stadium, and just I knew as soon as he hit it, because I was like high up in the stadium, but I just heard the connection, and it was the sweetest connection. I was just like, oh jeez, he's nailed it, and I didn't even have to look because he just ran off it straight away. Kid has got some stones on him, and he didn't even take that long. He's just like, yep, give me the ball, and then just absolutely pancaked it, and it just went straight through. And I just thought, you know what, fair play. I can hold my head up after a loss like that. Just be like, you know what, fair play. He just absolutely
Hmm.
nailed it. So great wee young player there.
I
But I
don't know
mean,
whether you caught it against the Stormers. Dan Edwards was the third Ospreys player to ever do a full house. So obviously try, convert in the try, drop goal, and what am I missing? Penalty. Only the third player after Hooky
lovely,
and Dan Bigger. So yeah, he's special.
very
I don't
nice.
know if we'll see him this weekend. Jack Walsh went out last weekend for the Bulls. So we'll
Mm.
see. We'll see. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for my questions. Sam, Mark, have you got anything to ask of Jack before we do some predictions?
Yeah,
Yeah, do you want to go first, Sam?
I'll go first, ladies first. Found it really interesting what you said about like the the man mountain freak of nature players, because we've obviously got
Mm.
some what I would say smaller stature players within the Ospreys squad and the Ospreys setup. Jack
Yeah.
Morgan was always told too small, and I know we say this all the time. We've also got, the wonder kid Morgan, um, as well. So we've got those small players ourselves, and I think you're right. Talent is talent, irrespective of size. And again, bringing the youngsters through, and again, youngsters I'm seeing as under 26, because you have got potentially 7 or 8 years playing out of those guys.
Hmm.
So I'm really interested. Um, I'm I've made a bit of a faux pas for Friday because I'm not going to be able to watch. I know I'm taking my mum out. So, and I'm in a theatre that has absolutely no signal. So I will be cutting off contact with everybody to come home and watch it. And then I'll either be happy or cry afterwards. But
Oh dear.
it's certainly a game that I'm looking forward to watching, um, and seeing what's going on. Whether I'd probably feel better watching it as a neutral, maybe, but obviously not in this house. But that's all I wanted to say was really I wholeheartedly agree with you with the smaller stature players. I think, yeah, talent will always out no matter what the size. Skill is
Yeah,
skill. You're right.
absolutely. I mean, you guys had Shane Williams, so you know all about small guys being able to play rugby, and that was what always what it was all about. It was about rugby being for all shapes and sizes and things like that. And you got guys like Luke Morgan, Keelan Giles, guys like that who can swivel and swerve and step.
Love Keelan playing. Absolutely love Keelan playing. Really think he's got, I think it would be a shame for him not to have a call up soon, but very much looking forward to Friday. Mark, I will hand over to you, but Jack seems to have
I
frozen
was going to say, I'm speaking to a.
in a very lovely pose.
So
So,
Jack has left us and is sulking because Sam personally insulted him by saying that he's his second favourite on the Red Hand podcast. So
had
we're
my
just
fella
gonna
mug as
carry on.
well.
Oh, the fella mug.
Fella
There we
mug came out.
go. That's probably why. Anyway, so we were going to do predictions with Jack, but we'll have to get those from him post podcast recording and just pop them online for you guys to see or something. But before we do our predictions, I just have a couple of Ulster Ospreys sort of stats just to set the tone and
Oh, you're
you know
Gustavo.
demonstrate the record. And it's not good reading.
Oh no.
So our last match out in Belfast against Ulster, they won 47-17 in 2022. In the Out of the last 8 home matches, the Ospreys have won 4 and lost 4, with 3 of the last 4 decided by 8 points of fewer. In the Ospreys' last 8 matches against Irish opposition, we've lost 7 of those 8. And Ulster's last 21 matches against Welsh opposition, they've won 19 of them, but both of those losses came against the Ospreys. So you've just joined us again in time for predictions, Jack. So I think you caught the latter end
Apologies
of my
about
stats
that.
there. History is in your favour. What do you
Yes.
reckon for this weekend? Do you,
Yes.
do you typically go for a margin or do you go for an exact score prediction?
I yeah, usually a margin, but I mean I can give a score prediction as well. But I'd imagine I just think that well, home advantage is obviously a massive thing in the URC, but well, just generally speaking. So yeah, we will not want to lose in Ravenhill, and I just think that the home factor will kind of give us that little bit of a boost. So it'll be, I'd put us at about like probably a 15 point kind of margin of victory. I think it'll be roughly around that, but that's me being kind of brutally honest with you guys because I think that we do have, enough to kind of deal with with your kind of weapons as well. And I think that, we're just starting to click and just being at home and just having a few kind of big victories against kind of Glasgow and Connacht. We can look at the Osprey side and think that actually, okay, we should be able to beat these guys. So that's just me being honest with you. But it always can always change, depends how we start and if there's any early cards or things like that. But I'd say in the sort of Ulster to be in the sort of high kind of 20s, with hopefully a bonus point because I think that at home, that's what we should always kind of be kind of looking for. And scoring tries, although we got pretty hammered in South Africa. We did manage to, get a 4 try bonus point against the Lions, and we were very close to getting a bonus point against the Bulls. And I would have taken that as a tour to South Africa. 2 points on tour to that in South Africa is pretty good going, no matter who you're playing. So, yeah, I think they'll be targeting a bonus point win. It could be a bit closer. But yeah, like you say, the Ospreys have been the sort of the bogey team for us in terms of Welsh opposition. So could be a bit closer, but I reckon about 15 point sort of margin for Ulster would probably might be about right, but we'll see.
how many points would we have to beat you by for us to dethrone another head coach?
Wow, how many points? Yeah, how many points to get rid of Richie?
I think we're looking at cricket score, Rod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 50 at least. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It'd
yeah,
have
yeah.
to be, and I think it'd have to be nil as well, probably. But no, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
that's
I,
probably
I I'm
really
I'm with you.
disrespectful, but but
I'm with
yeah,
you with
no,
your prediction.
that'll be
I don't think
fine.
that's a
Yeah,
million
yeah.
miles off. Yeah, yeah.
No,
Okay,
unfortunately,
okay.
life doesn't get any easier for us, does it? We've had two tough games, Munster and the Bulls. Two tough a fortnight of tough encounters, and then probably the last place we want to go is Ravenhill after that.
All
Notoriously
your
tough
games
place
have
to
been
go and
tough
win.
though.
But
Like
yeah, we've had a
this is a
difficult schedule to
tough
start
start.
the season. Yeah,
So
definitely.
I would caution against getting too negative just yet because that's rough. And you're probably the pick of the Welsh sides, although you're probably not thinking that at the minute just because of how you started. But I would still have you probably above the likes. But then again, Cardiff, who started very well, and obviously the Dragons pipped you, but it was first game of the season, and teams like the Dragons and the sort of the lower sides, they always tend to start the season quite well, and then they kind of taper off. So potentially the worst time to play them, but yeah, it's a long old season. So just remember that Munster started the season and hardly won a game before sort of Christmas, and they went on to win the whole damn thing. So anything's possible. So you know, don't be
I
too
think
hard
it's
on
about
yourselves.
performance for us to an extent as well on Saturday. I think after two
Mm,
poor, performances the last two games, I don't think we're expecting to win necessarily, but if we can be competitive at least and keep the game tight, for 50, 60 minutes, not implode in the first 20 like we did last Saturday, not be nilled like we did the weekend before. I think it's about performance for us this weekend and showing an improved performance with a bit more fight and battle
yeah,
than the last couple of weeks.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's your prediction, Mark?
I'm going to be slightly more optimistic, but not overly so. I think we might sneak within bonus point range, maybe. So I'll go Ulster by, let's go 7 then.
Mhm. I think that'll be just out of reach, I have to admit, but maybe I've just been scarred and burnt by my optimistic score predictions in the last few weeks. So I'm going to be a bit more conservative. And I'm with you, Jack. I think a couple of tries on us realistically. So yeah, let's say 14 points. Ulster will win by. It's mine. What about you, Sam?
Now I'm suitably depressed. Um, I know. Get the
She's
pills out, Sam.
scribbling her out Ospreys by 30 points now.
I'm not.
Rethinking it.
I haven't even written that down. I'm a poly optimist by you. Um, I was kind of thinking between 8 to 10, to Ulster, and I think I will go with 10. And it does pain me because it pains me. But I
Mhm.
think being realistic, if we are within that distance, I'll be okay with that. I'll be
Mm.
I'll be all right with that. Yeah.
Mark's spot on though. It is about performance. We've probably been the worst performing team so far, haven't we?
Yeah.
Results aside, just on the
Yeah.
pitch, how does it look? Is it attractive? Is it effective rugby? It hasn't been the last two games. I'd almost argue that the Dragons are playing the
They are.
best rugby
Yeah.
in terms of the amount of opportunities they're creating, which is such a flip on what we're used to. So, yeah, I just want to see a performance, couple of tries that are well worked and not sort of winning the game on cards, which we did a few times last year. Had a few sort of decisions that went our way and disadvantaged the opposition and allowed us to come back into games. I don't want one of those a controversial one that's sort of argued online. I just want a good performance, whether we win or lose. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
we'll reconvene next week to do our look back. Hopefully not in anger. Boom boom. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Um, the I've written these down because we'll obviously post on our socials next week who was nearer. If by some miracle, and I mean an absolute miracle, we do anything out there, then I may just fall off my unicorn in shock. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a tough one, and I think the players deserve to go out and well, they don't deserve. They need to go out and perform. The fans deserve a performance. They deserve. I'm not saying they're not trying. I'm not saying that they're not going out and doing their best, but it's something's just not clicking at this point in time. And when we click, I think we're going to be good. I think we're going to be outstanding. We're going to be the best region, but we're just not at that point at the minute that we are clicking as a team for whatever reason it is. Welsh rugby is a shambles on and off the pitch at the minute. I think realistically looking at it, and it's one of the things we're going to discuss later as part of our breaking news. But I think I agree, Mark. I think we just need to go out and make a good show of ourselves. Nobody ever learns anything from getting everything 100% right all the time. So hopefully they're taking things away from these losses and they're being introspective about it and taking points away that they can improve on. I think ultimately they're all looking pretty fit physically. Mentally, they need to put the work in now. They need to have that mental toughness because we did not have that killer instinct last week. We didn't for those last sort of 10, 15 minutes to come away with no points when they're down to 13 is just not, it's not on. No. So it's having that mental toughness to kind of work there and push through it. I think push through the performance.
Which was our MO last year.
Yeah.
We could go and just grind out to win against potentially any opposition. If we turned up on the day with like you said, the right mindset, we were capable of doing the unexpected. So maybe we can see some of that again this weekend, but none of us are sounding that optimistic.
Let's hope for a pleasant surprise come Friday night then.
Have to put a believe sign on the wall. Do you know what I mean? And have we got a Roy Kent figure at the Ospreys?
Oh, I don't know.
Do we? No, I don't think we have. I have to think
about
that.
I do not know what you're talking about.
No real hard man. I don't think so.
Oh gosh, is it only me and Mark who knows what the believe is in Richmond AFC?
Any clue, Jack?
I thought you were talking about that show with what's his name?
Jason Sudeikis.
Jason Sudeikis, where he taps the sign on the thing.
It's the believe above the door.
Yeah, believe, yeah. We have an Irish rugby one where Andy Farrell does that, but it's resilience because or what is it, like adversity or something, and he's just like talking about like, oh, lads love the adversity, blah blah blah, have a bit of that. Yeah, anytime there's a bit of adversity, like Josh van der Fleer having to throw into lineouts against Scotland and stuff, it's just like, oh yeah, tap the sign, adversity.
Tap the sign.
So we love a bit of that, but yeah, man, believe anything's possible. So
it's Ted Lasso on Apple, Rod.
That's it.
He comes across to the UK as a successful American football coach, and he knows nothing about soccer. And he brings Coach Beard with him, who's always gone through life with him. Basically, she's got the football club through the divorce the owner has, and she's brought him over as an absolute joke to try and run the club into the ground because she hates her ex-husband so much. And he comes and he performs, and he's like, really, please watch it. It's the most joyful thing I've ever watched. And Roy Kent is just, I love him so much. But they've got a sign above the dressing room. It's like a yellow sign with the word "just believe" written on it. And as they come out of the dressing room, they will tap it above. Okay. So that's his that's his thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's well worth a watch. It's really funny.
Okay.
But Jack, thank you so much for coming on
Yeah.
and joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. And I have started listening to the pod, and I do really, really like it. And I am sorry that I said you're not my favourite and that Ian is, but if you want to tell Ian he's my favourite, then that's fine. It's
Something
just
for him
me.
to aspire to.
Yeah,
he will love that. So
it's just my
yeah.
age. I'm 47. Um, you know, but thank you so much for coming on and shooting the breeze with us about all things rugby. We love speaking to other fans who are as passionate as us. But before you go, I did have my fella mug in your honour.
Hey, there it is.
So if you could leave us with a mother of God or now we're sucking on diesel, I'd be really happy.
Yeah,
It'd make my
yeah.
evening.
I can leave you one of those. But yeah, well hopefully yeah, hopefully come sort of Friday night Ulster will get onto the pitch against the Ospreys and we'll be sucking diesel if we get a bonus point win. So
So excited.
yeah, I'll leave you with
Seamless.
Love it. Love it. That's really slick.
You
So
like that?
before
Do you
your
like that?
marriage, must have been great, girls.
Yeah.
With there.
Ah, well, I couldn't say.
And
Couldn't
possibly
say. So
comment.
yeah.
Yeah. DM me on Twitter. Actually, no, don't DM me on Twitter. I'm coming off there. It's a cesspit. But
True.
it's
Yeah.
very true.
No. Thanks for
But
having me
thank you
on,
so much.
guys. No.
Go well this
And
Yeah, no,
weekend.
it's been fun.
in Bristol,
And
if you ever
yeah.
want to come down and watch a game with us, feel
Mhm.
free. Me and Rod are
Yeah,
usually
yeah.
there.
Mhm.
No, apart from the
So
result, I enjoyed my little trip to Swansea. I got stranded there. The trains got cancelled on Sunday night, so I couldn't get back. So stranded in Swansea, which
oh God.
well, yeah, less said about that, the
Yeah, no,
better.
I bet that wasn't great by High Street Station.
Sounds like a horror
But
film, doesn't it? Stranded in
It's like,
Swansea.
yeah. Not great. But no. Always good to shoot the breeze and yeah, all the best for the rest of the season as well.
thank you so much. Cheers, Jack. Take care.
Cheers,
Take it
Jack.
steady.
Thanks,
Good
Bye
one.
bye.
Bye. Guys, we've had some cracking Irish guests, haven't we?
Really have,
Let's
yeah.
hope the Scots can live up to this when we get them on.
Yeah.
Have a bit of Celtic rivalry.
Pressure's on for your partner, John, Sam.
Do you know what? He said he will come on for the Glasgow game, but I've also contacted another rugby pod to see if we can get someone from Edinburgh on. Um, but those Scots have got a lot to live up to, mind, with these Irish boys with the banter.
Bars
Like,
high.
fair play. But anyway, moving swiftly on, I have never been so happy to see a man back from COVID in all my life. Marc, I love you. I missed you. I didn't enjoy doing the URC roundup.
Yeah,
So
I'm off my man flu bed just for tonight.
happy days. Take your URC roundup away. I feel like we need an intro tune for you. We look into that.
Maybe you can sing one for me.
Okay. Marc's URC roundup. That was crap. I'll come up with something better for next
Yeah,
week.
it's a bit better than that. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Yeah, you did a grand job though last week. Really enjoyed listening to your roundup last week and some really good insight into those games as well. So good job. Yeah, some really, really good games to sort of reflect on this week again. So I'll go through chronologically as I always do. So starting with the Friday night game, only one game on Friday night last week, which was unusual because I'm usually up watching the second match after the first one finishes, but only Glasgow Zebra last Friday night. A comfortable 33-3 win for Glasgow. A dominant performance, a more pragmatic performance than they put in against Cardiff the week before. Interesting, listen to their coaches being interviewed afterwards. They were happier with that performance than they were with the Cardiff performance. They felt defensively they were stronger. It was a more rounded performance, I think, with the comments, than the previous week. Glasgow are playing well, but they're not accurate still. They're leaving a lot of points out there in terms of their attack. And I think at some point they're going to properly click. And when all the nice play that they put together comes off, they're going to absolutely batter somebody one of these weeks. Because at the moment they're not quite clinical, they're not quite accurate, but they're still winning games comfortably. And Zebra, unfortunately for them, seemed to have regressed back to where they were beginning of the season. They had that one fantastic result against Munster where they looked like the All Blacks, and then they've gone back to looking like Zebra again, and it's a shame for them. But yeah, they were pretty poor again Friday, but Glasgow were very dominant. So yeah, comfortable win for Glasgow, and they sort of plod on picking up the bonus point wins every week. We had a cracking local derby on Saturday afternoon, which I think we all watched from the online chat and stuff that we were having. Really entertaining game. It wasn't the most high quality game, maybe in terms of lots of sort of errors, but just what you expect a derby to be. It was quite harem scarum, wasn't it? It was good atmosphere, pretty much full house at the Arms Park, and proper derby. The Scarlets built up a nice lead and then tried their very best to hand it back to Cardiff. It sort of seems to be the Scarlets' way this season that they build a lead and then look to find a way to lose somehow. And they very, very nearly did that on Saturday. But looking at the positives for the Scarlets, I mean, there was changes at number 10 for both teams before the game. So Dabia came in for Cardiff, although he went off before half time. And then Owen Lloyd came in for the Scarlets and had a really, really decent game. I think he's put his hand up definitely in terms of international selection, and interesting comments from him after the game, or I think before the game potentially, that 10 is where he wants to play. And based on how he played Saturday, I think that probably is his best position. And might have put his hand up in terms of Gatland's plans for the autumn. Scarlett's midfield looks tasty. Johnny Williams came in and did a great job. Eddie James played well. Gareth Davis still looking sprightly, even though he's getting on a little bit. He's had a really good start to the season as well. But like I said, the Scarlets then tried to just hand the game to Cardiff, ill discipline, and ended up hanging on with 13 men at the end of the game for a narrow win. And it took a try-saving tackle from Blair Murray about 5 minutes before the end, just to sort of confirm that win for them. But yeah, really entertaining game. It was a proper Welsh derby, and a nice way to spend a Saturday afternoon watching that. We listened to the Scrum 5 podcast earlier on as well. It was commented on after the game how the pitch was full of people. And it took me back to, you probably remember this, Sam, when I first started to watch rugby. That was the same every single week. The game finished, and sometimes the after game was more exciting than the game itself, because as soon as the game finished, as a teenager, I'd go onto the pitch with my little autograph book. The players would all be on the pitch, and still remember to today the first experience I had of a player on the pitch was Richard Moriarty, who was an absolute giant. And I remember as sort of a 12, 13-year-old standing next to this absolute monster of a man with my little autograph book, looking at somewhere around his crotch area, probably with the height that he was at that time. But just seeing all those kids on the pitch after the game and everybody mingling together, it was a bit of a throwback really to how rugby was, when I sort of grew up. And hopefully when we're into the Helens next year, we'll see more of that down there as well, with the artificial surface stuff. Obviously, you can't do that at swansea.com because of the grass and everything else. But, it'd be nice to see that become part of the routine for us maybe next year as well.
Yeah, I've never really experienced that side of rugby, apart from exhibition games where, some of the regional teams have gone out to local clubs to
Yeah.
play them in a pre-season or something like that. I haven't experienced it at the highest level, so that'll be nice going to St. Helens and having a bit more of that interaction.
Last time I experienced that was actually at St Helens when Alan Wyn Jones and the Barbers game was on, because all the players stayed out on the pitch, and it was cracking to go around and speak to people, um, and players that were international players and top-notch international players.
Yeah.
And the kids loved it. They loved it. Some of them gave their boots away, or someone gave their shorts away. I'm trying to remember who it was. It was one of the Scottish players. But they were giving all sorts of stuff away to the kids, and to see the look on those kids' faces was something else. I can remember I was at the last game that was played at the old Cardiff Arms Park, and they led us all onto the pitch, and everybody was just taking grass and clumps of soil, and I don't think it was just carnage. But being able to do that was quite a joyful thing, and I would love for kids to be able to do that
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. No, it was a real
and
fun
have
match on
more
Saturday.
portability with the players, I think, because a lot of them are great, but some of them are not. And I could name and shame, but I won't.
Yeah, no, it was a nice sort of throwback to see that happening on Saturday, and just to see everybody mingling after the game, fans from
Mm.
both sides, and just enjoying that experience together. So yeah, good to see.
Mm.
Moving on then, so two of the games on Saturday afternoon. Benetton got on the board finally, their first win of the season against the Sharks. Obviously an important win for Benetton. They were dominant from start to finish. Um, and maybe more questions on the Sharks as to where they actually stand this season. Obviously, they haven't got their Springboks back yet, and their squad's going to be stacked when they do get them. But they almost looked disinterested on Saturday. They looked tired. It was sort of an Airstream performance by them. So yeah, I say the jury's out in terms of the Sharks at the moment as to, they're going to be back home next weekend. So, maybe time to judge them when they're back home from this sort of mini tour that they're on at the moment. But for Benetton, obviously that was a big, big win for them, a much needed win. Because I think, a lot of people, myself included, predicted they were going to be, up in the playoff places by the end of the season, and they've, flattered to deceive so far. But I think, hopefully that's the first steps back on a sort of recovery for them, really. And they looked very good. But as I said, on the flip side, the Sharks looked really, really poor as well. Talking of bounce backs, Edinburgh, after an unbelievably tough schedule to start the year, we thought we had a tough schedule, but, Edinburgh have had Leinster, Bulls, um, South African tour, so they've had a really, really tough start. And they beat the Stormers 38-7, a Stormers team that, gave us plenty of problems for a good hour a few weeks ago. But Edinburgh got on the front foot from the start. Their pack looked dominant. They've got some really exciting backs as well, Edinburgh. They're a really nice team to watch, and it was good to see them bounce back, especially after the absolute hammering they took at the Lions the week before, 48-0 down at half time. I think it showed a lot of character from them to bounce back like this, and to, give their home fans something to shout about, definitely. Stormers never really threatened. There was sort of 10-15 minute period either side of half time where they looked a little bit better. They've got a dangerous team, but they never really put anything together on Saturday in Edinburgh. As it was sort of dominant from start to finish, really. And I think it's going to be a tough place for anybody to go. I think Edinburgh at home potentially going to be a different proposition than away this season, so it's going to be a tough place for anybody to visit. Obviously, they're coming down to us in a couple of weeks, so we'll see what sort of form they're in by then. Moving on to Saturday evening. There was a small little shindig at Croke Park on Saturday night. Just a small matter of 80 odd thousand people who gathered together to watch Leinster beat Munster 26-12. A bit like our game on Saturday, really. Leinster had the game sewn up in the first 15 minutes. They scored 3 tries out of the blocks. Looked like it was going to be an embarrassing night for Munster. They sealed the bonus point just before half time, and of course it was RG Snyman. They got the try to get that bonus point win for them. It had to be, didn't it? And he looked just a monster, isn't he? I don't know when they seen the clip online of him doing the line out catch with one hand and then sort of throwing it American football style back to the sort of scrum half or whatever. He's just an absolute beast, isn't he? And yeah, just the look in his face, and he was sort of soaking up the adulation of the Leinster fans and the boos that were inevitably coming from the Munster fans as well. But yeah, it was Munster, to be fair to them, were quite depleted with injuries, but they fought back well second half. They but a bit like the Bulls, when you get ahead like that, Leinster just had to sit back and control the game really from there, and that's what they did really. Second half, they did a huge amount of kick in. Second half was sort of possession, just kept on pinning Munster back. Munster didn't give up; they kept on coming at them all the time. But it was too big a lead for them to come back against a team of Leinster's quality, really. And I was looking at Leinster's team and the changes that they'd made from the previous week. I think they can realistically put 2 15s out that can be competitive against anybody in this league. And that's the scary thing really for Leinster, and anybody that comes up against them this year, that however many players they change in that team, they're basically changing international for international.
Pretty
Um,
scary stuff, isn't it? What they've got in the reserve, and they could probably field a third team that would beat the lower half of the table.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it was positive from Munster that they were able to stem the bleeding after that first 20, 25 minutes. This is one of the games that I watched. And yeah, after the first quarter, you thought, oh Christ, this could be a really, really tough night for Munster. But they did sort of show things up again in the second half and reduce the gap a little and make it look a little less dominant. The score probably doesn't reflect just how strong Leinster were.
No, I don't think it does.
Because they did look, they never looked like losing it, did they, Leinster?
No, they didn't. No.
No.
No. But as an event, thinking about the URC as the URC as a sort of competition, the boost that that gives the competition in terms of, 82, 83,000 or whatever it was watching a URC game. Granted, the audience that they've got in Ireland to watch this kind of product is, more than we could ever dream of probably in Wales. The closest we can come to is something like Judgment Day where we get sort of 40, 50,000 together. But to sell out every single ticket at Croke Park for an event like this within the URC was, quite an event. And, to see that on telly and to, just the boost that that'll give to the league, I think takes, it's got enough knockers and enough, takes enough hits from, Premiership clubs and Premiership fans or whatever. I think it's just shows that the quality of the product can be high. And, that it is a good league, maybe.
It's an international level crowd, that is, it really is. And what you've said about Judgment Day is pretty much what I thought in my head when I saw it. We can't even, as 4 regions, match that.
No, we can't.
On Judgment Day when you've got 2 good head-to-head games.
Yeah.
I say good, but you've got 2 head-to-head, South Wales derbies going on. But then it always amazes me that you can sell out the stadium for Wales, but where are these people on a wet, rainy, drizzly Friday or a Saturday? This is why we can't get grassroots rugby and regional rugby off the ground, is because you just don't have that lower level support. So to see them have that is absolutely phenomenal achievement.
Yeah.
Blinking heck, if I was out in Ireland, even as a non-Leinster or Munster fan, I would have gone to see that, because that's a cracker of a game.
Yeah, absolutely. And shows where Irish rugby is as well. Obviously, they had their other derby on Saturday as well, straight after Ulster against Connacht. I think Connacht are officially my second team now, to be honest. I've got a bit of a Connacht man crush going on this season. They're so entertaining to watch. I think every single game they've played this year has been an entertaining encounter. All four matches. It was a really tight game. Again, a bit like the Cardiff Scarlets game on Saturday. Real sort of to and fro derby. First of all, a fantastic kit matchup. Ulster brought out their special provincial jersey, which is a nice black and gold number, which is gorgeous. And then Connacht's shirt, I just love this season anyway. Just the sort of shade of green and everything. So as a kit matchup from a rugby shirt aficionado, it was a nice game to watch from that sort of standpoint as well. But the game itself, real full-blooded game, a little bit of niggle on both teams as well, as Jack was saying earlier on, a few sort of off the ball hits and stuff as well led to some injuries. And it what sort of decided the game in the end, that there was an off the ball incident with a sort of a shoulder barge to the head about 10 minutes before the end, which led to a red card for the Connacht lock. And that's what sort of swung the game to Ulster in the end. They kicked a penalty from that, scored a try a few minutes later. And that was sort of game over, really. I mean, Connacht came back and got their second bonus point with a penalty with the last kick of the game. But it was a really good derby game. Again, a bit more quality maybe than the sort of Scarlets Cardiff game had. I think both these teams are looking decent. And just shows the strength of Irish rugby, really. They're very much the third and fourth teams within Ireland, and yet the quality of rugby that they can put on show is really good. So yeah, really entertaining game, and I think for my future games to watch, just watch Connacht all the time, because all of their games are just super entertaining. One more game for the weekend then, which is the Dragons against the Lions on Sunday. It was nice to have a Sunday game actually for a change, to spread the games out across the weekend a little bit. Very different performance by the Lions. They've sort of dazzled at home the last couple of weeks, scoring, a huge bounty of points. They had to really battle for this win down at Rodney Parade on Sunday. I think what was interesting for me was the reaction of the Dragons coaching staff and things afterwards, that they were so disappointed with the defeat. You know, they've had two close defeats now to two strong South African teams over the last fortnight, and their first reaction has been, we should have won those games. We're disappointed we couldn't close it out. Whereas last season, they would have been delighted to pick up a bonus point from both of those games, walk away with that, and be more than happy. And I think it shows the improvement the Dragons have made this year. They were so competitive in this game, you know, matched the Lions up front. And I know the Lions pack maybe isn't as strong as the other sort of South African teams, you know, but it's still big enough to compete, certainly. You know, but the Dragons matched them, you know, punch for punch. You know, Tain Basham had a really, really good game. We talked about him a couple of weeks ago in terms of him putting his hand up for Welsh selection, and he's, you know, putting in the performances to back up what he's saying, really. And he was sort of one of the stars on Sunday. But you know, the Dragons are nice to watch at the minute. They're an entertaining team to watch, and you know, they are going to get across the line. They're going to get some wins. But like we said at the start of the season as well, what they didn't get last year was those losing bonus points, which they are picking up
Yes.
this year, and that's going to help
Mm.
them as the season goes on as well. You know, if they're going to be looking at the bottom of the table or towards the bottom of the table, if they can pick up 6, 7, 8, 9 bonus points as opposed to 2 or 3 that they had last year, then they're already potentially, you know, looking to go up a couple of places from where they finished last season. So, you know, the Dragons are on and up, and they're just a different proposition this season as we found in the first game. But I think every other performance that they've put in this season shows there's a lot more steel about them this year than there has been in many a year, I would say, probably.
Yeah, they've definitely got a lot more niggle this year, haven't they?
Yeah,
And just key individuals putting their hands up and saying, you know, I'm willing to put the work in, and I'm willing to, you know, do that, make the hard yards and go that extra couple of inches. Um, and it shows. It shows. They're just playing a better brand of rugby. The support is the network seems better on the
yeah,
pitch, allowing players to go and do their jobs more fully and more wholeheartedly, just by having, you know, a better structure around them. I'm really pleased for them. They're definitely my second Welsh team. So I'm looking forward to seeing them do a bit better this year. And if they can take a leaf out of Cardiff's book and not get more wins, not target more wins this year, but just target more losing bonus points,
yeah,
it'll be good for them. And hopefully you can see them climb a little bit further off the bottom of the table.
definitely. In terms
Mhm.
of games to watch this week, I've did a little bit and I've picked two games because they're both very similar in their kind of meaning, really, in terms of how the season started. Two South African teams going home. The Stormers against Munster and the Sharks against Glasgow. Two South African teams that have underperformed so far this season, flattered to deceive a little bit. Glasgow, obviously the champions, their first overseas, their first South African visit of the season. Munster, likewise, you know, were struggling a bit with injuries, you know, recovering from that loss against Leinster as well. You'd expect the South African teams to have their Springboks back this
Mhm.
weekend as well, so they're going to be stronger. They're going to be stronger at home anyway. But I think it'd be really interesting to see, you know, I think is a litmus test of where Glasgow are, whether they're as competitive as they were last season. You know, they've had a fairly easy start to the season fixture wise. This is the first major test they've got really, apart from that Ulster game, the first game that they lost. And then Munster have been a bit hit and miss so far, but you know, the Stormers are not pulling up any trees either. So I think, you know, those two games in terms of narrative are really interesting this weekend. So apart from Connacht, obviously, those are my two games to watch this weekend.
Mhm. Edinburgh Cardiff could be an interesting one as well up at the Hive. Although after that result last week, I might fancy Edinburgh to maybe put a couple of scores on Cardiff up there.
I think so.
Um, and Dragons Benetton, Dragons at home could be interesting as well, based on what we've just been saying about the Dragons. There's definitely one that they're going to be eyeing up, isn't it?
Yes, be targeting, wouldn't they? But likewise, Benetton, I
Mm.
think, would be targeting that game as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So I suppose we've got to rip that plaster off, guys, and we've got to talk about Saturday.
Mhm.
Just rip it off. So Rod and I finally met in real life. We had a little
Mhm.
cuddle. Met his cute
Yeah,
girlfriend. She wants to be my friend.
got the photo to
Uh,
prove it.
we have, yeah, we have. Um, oh gosh, that game Saturday. That first 15 minutes was horrific to
Mhm.
watch. Genuinely horrific. There was just no response or answer to that attack. It was difficult to watch in the stadium. And I know that I said it earlier on, but I think we did not take the opportunities that we could have taken when we had yellow and red cards. We just didn't have that killer instinct. Willie LaRue is Willie LaRue. I he spent quite a lot of time offside, if I'm being honest, from my view in the stadium. And there were some interesting comments from people behind me about him, being in a different postcode. But they just looked classy. They just looked strong. And we just didn't have any answer for it at certain points. There were some good moments in the game. Dewey's hit in that second half towards the last quarter, where he just went in and got straight back up and kept on going. That was a high point for me. But other than that, I'm struggling to find any real positives. I think the score flattered us towards the end a little bit. But for me, hard watching the stadium. And where I sit on my side is where Toby comes down and he walks past us. And I asked him if he wanted a hug at the end of the game, because we saw him going in half time. He did not look a happy bun. That man did not look happy at all. And then at the end of the game, he just looked shell shocked. Then he just didn't know. It was a tough watch, Rod. You were on the opposite side to me, weren't you? So how did you
Yeah.
respond?
Well, our first quarter, their heads dipped and our heads dipped as supporters, and the atmosphere didn't recover from there.
Yeah,
Um, it could have been a lot worse than it turned out to be, based on the power that they were bringing and the bodies that they were throwing at our line. And like you said, there were moments where we looked good. So it wasn't like the weekend before where you couldn't even pick out
yeah,
a half decent moment. There were moments this weekend where there were things to be pleased about, but they weren't joined together in any which way that actually yielded results.
mm,
Um, they were down to, as you said, 13 at one point and then 12 for the last
yeah.
couple of minutes after that 5 minute faffing around with who was coming on and off. In against 12, even with 2 minutes left on the clock, you should be walking it in
Oh,
if you're
right.
any half decent team. But I think our confidence had gone by that point and we'd lost any kind of momentum. The refs' decisions weren't going our way. If you sort of take
Yeah,
the cards
the
out
Cree
of the
red
mix,
card. Yeah,
the general rub of the green, everything was going the Bulls' way.
yeah,
And you can only expect that when you're a team who's got the momentum, and that's not something that you can hold against the ref. That's just rugby. That's just professional sport. When you're doing things well, people don't see or refs don't see the little decisions that, or
yeah.
the little actions that could get you in trouble. Yes, there was a lot of offside players in the Bulls line, but God, Willie LaRue was exceptional that game. It was like he was playing for the Springboks in a World Cup semi-final. Any time that he got the ball, and you could tell he was lining up for a crossfield kick,
Just go
everyone in the
kick into
stadium
him.
held their breath because anything could happen, anything could come off that ball, and we were so narrow in defence out in the wide channels. So yeah, another one where there's not a lot of positives to take out from it. Um, I was anticipating a bit more of a response emotionally more than anything, not necessarily results wise. And I just don't feel like we saw that. So coming out of another one this week, just feeling a bit deflated and a bit unsure as to what we even need to improve on. It's unclear.
Where's our
I think,
mental resilience from last year gone? That's what I want to know.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think what's worrying as well is attacking wise, there seems to be no structure to our attack. There's no sort of shape. It isn't obvious what we're trying to do in attack, particularly. I know that,
Yeah.
Thistle took a lot of criticism online on Saturday night. Just in terms of our attack generally this season hasn't looked. We've looked quite blunt, haven't we? Really,
Mm.
in the backs this season, definitely. But then, you can point the finger a bit further forward as well. We were well beaten at sort of breakdown again
Mhm.
this weekend, like we were at Munster last week as well. We didn't seem to be committing players to the ruck, which is obviously a tactic.
Yeah,
But it's just letting them win every sort of collision and sort of breakdown and things, and not sort of competing there didn't really help us very much. And then when you've got a scrum that's on retreat constantly, the backs aren't going to have a platform to work from
no,
when your scrum's going back at a rate of knots constantly. So,
Mm.
like you said, Rod, it's kind of everything that could have been negative and went wrong about it seemed to go wrong, but it's hard to know or pinpoint what's the one thing that we need to improve the most, and what's the one thing that can make the difference in terms of making us competitive. Because the first 20 minutes aside, that first 20 minutes could have happened against the Stormers. We were slow out of the blocks against the
yeah,
Stormers, but they weren't clinical enough to sort of punish us. Munster, we were slow out of the blocks last week. The conditions didn't help with that. And Saturday we didn't get started. And the Bulls are going to come at you from the start. They're going to be physical, just like the Stormers were. And yet we seem to be surprised when that happens. We seem to be surprised the Bulls are running at us. We seem to be surprised that they were just, playing it out wide and trying to put width on the game and stuff. That was going to happen. That's how the Bulls play. And but we looked surprised by it and shocked by it somehow, and
there
prepared
was a
for it.
there was a point in the last 10 minutes where Yestin was to the right, and he was screaming for the ball. He would have, if you'd have just spread that ball and you've been quick and wide, he had no one on
Mm.
that right hand side of the pitch defending against him. No one. But we continued to drive forward and shove it up our jumper and try and force it that way.
Yeah,
You were not, you're not following the rugby play. Now, for me, you should be looking. Where can I spread it? This is not working for us. Can we
Yeah.
spread it out wide? All you need is to do, and we have got some lovely handling skills. So there's no reason why we couldn't have popped that ball out to the right quickly and smoothly, because he was literally doing his nut. He was jumping up and down, he was shaking his arms, and he was like, pass me the ball, because he
Mm.
would have literally walked it in. There was, you know,
yeah,
and that could have been the difference between 19 to 26. Do you know what I mean? That
Mhm.
that was the difference that could have made. Just having the awareness around you as well. Um, but it's easy for us to say we're not on the pitch. We're looking at it with hindsight and and everything else. But I just want to see a bit more heart this week, a
mm,
little bit more
yeah,
aggressiveness, a little bit more niggle, a little bit more structure. As I say, I can't watch it this week, but when I turn that on, that's what I want to see, is a little bit more something then. Just give me a bit of faith as a fan that there's that glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel, that we're going to build as the season goes on. Because
Mm.
I can live with the first 3, 4 games not being great. What I can't live with, or I will find difficult to live with, is that we continue in this vein all season. That will be a
yeah,
hard watch.
yeah,
It was unintelligent rugby towards the end there,
Yeah,
wasn't it? When you're playing with a three-man advantage. I mean, two-man advantage for most of that last 15 minutes, but
yeah,
three-man advantage for the last 2 minutes. It should be child's play.
yeah,
It should be straightforward stuff. It shouldn't even register. You shouldn't have to think about it. It should just be a case of instinctually trying to spread them wider than they can defend. And we weren't doing that. We were just running into traffic, straight into their massive, massive players and expecting results from that. And it just didn't come. I was almost a bit not glad it didn't come, but I was like, well, yeah, what else did
mm,
you expect, boys?
yeah.
yeah,
I
But
mean,
but
being
it's
fair
it's
though,
leadership, isn't it?
yeah. And to be fair, the Bulls are a really good team. They're going to be top
Yeah.
four,
Yeah.
definitely. They're going to be one of the front runners to win the whole thing probably this season. They're going to do that to a lot of teams this season, and they're going to do a lot worse to a lot of teams this season as well.
Yeah.
So they are a really, really talented team. It did feel like they were toying with us a bit second half. They didn't have to put any more points on us. They had the bonus.
No.
They'd done what they needed to do, and they were happy to just soak up the pressure and just sort of play with us a little bit.
Yeah.
Really. And
Hmm.
that was the disappointing bit, really, that there seemed to be a real gulf. I know the 10-point final score, as you said, Rod, flatters us, and I think the gulf in quality between the two teams was way, way greater than that
It was
one.
apparent,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
apparent.
Yeah.
But onwards to Ulster, we know it's not going to be easy. None of us are expecting to win, but we just want a bit of entertaining. Just to, very gladiators moment, is it? Do I not
Mhm.
entertain?
Mhm.
But I'm going to amalgamate our questions and our breaking news this week because a lot of the questions that we've had this week are kind of around the breaking news that we've had, which funny enough came out while Rod and I were recording last week, which is the new Welsh Rugby Union proposal. I've read around a couple of articles about it. Basically, the crux of it all is to do with the current COVID loans that were taken from the Welsh government by the clubs during furlough and lockdown. Now, when I first saw the headlines and I first started reading about it, I thought the Welsh Rugby Union were actually doing something nice for a change. And then I dug in a little bit more. So when I first saw it, it said that they were willing to wipe out around about 2.5 million's worth of debt for each of the regions in return for 20% equity in the clubs. Now, when I first saw that, my Dragon's Den head went on, and I thought 20% is a lot for 2.5 mil. But then reading further into it to say that they require greater control in the clubs in return for that write-off or adding the debt to their role in that West loan. They've said that they require the Wales head coach to have greater control over the players, including where and when they play, number of minutes, and the ability to move them around the regions as and when needed, providing they've got the players' consent. Now, they've also thrown in as well deciding what position those players play in. So, for
Mhm.
example, like Johan Lloyd with his saying he wants to play at 10, if they go along the lines of this kind of proposal, then Gatland could turn around and say, well, actually, you want to play at 10, we'll move you here. Now, Dragons have come out and said that they're pretty interested in this kind of setup, which I can see from a Dragons point of view why they would be. They've only just come out of Welsh Rugby Union ownership, so it's probably not going to be a massive drop in the ocean for them. So I've got a concern over the players, but the big concern for me as well was also they will have a say in who your CEO is.
Mhm.
Um, Also, your coaches, your coaching team, also be involved with the players' strength and conditioning plans. And that to me is a worry.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, from my point of view, they're looking to get all this agreed by early November. And they've said two clubs are interested. Now, for me, the two clubs, Dragons, have come out and said, yeah, this is us. I suspect the other one is the Scarlets. Um, Cardiff fans are not happy on Twitter. Ospreys fans not happy on Twitter. But for
Cardiff fans
me,
should be happy. It'll just mean that all our players get moved to them.
get moved to
Yeah.
them, yeah. Um, but for me, as somebody who works in a commercial business, I don't want the Welsh Rugby Union, who could not organise a piss up in a brewery,
No.
deciding who my CEO is.
Hmm.
You sort out your committee first of all, and the way that you run Welsh Rugby, because I'm not being funny, you ain't making a success of it. I don't want somebody who's not commercially headed telling one of the regions how to commercially run their business. I just
Hmm.
don't see that as viable. And also, as a fan, you've got your one club players like Alan Wynne Jones.
Mm.
Kids have got their heroes. They fall in love with clubs through these heroes. They start lifelong relationships with these heroes. If you're moving some bugger around here, there, and everywhere, what are you creating? Are we going to end up something like Ireland, where yeah, okay, their four teams are doing pretty well, but look at Leinster, everything tends to go into Leinster, and I'm not being funny. We know that that's going to be Cardiff.
Mm.
I don't want that as a Welsh rugby fan. So a couple of the questions, I did think it was quite telling. The question that we had was, do you think we should accept the Welsh Rugby Union proposal and sell our soul, or should we tell them to off? So what are your guys' thoughts on it now that I've kind of debriefed it to you? Because I just think it's awful.
Yeah, you summarized it well there, and I agree with everything you said. It's this sense of total control that I don't
Mm,
really like, including the rehab of players. We know how hard Warren Gatland works his players in the run up to international windows,
mm.
um, and to hand over more control to him to be able to sort of pull players from games and move them into his camp or redistribute them around the teams. It just doesn't sit right with me for for what it's worth. Um, I'm no business nose, so I don't want to comment really on the on that side of things, but just from a a resource distribution sense, it would just be so concentrated in one or two of the regions because we don't have the player pool to distribute it further. And I think we know who those favoured teams would be. And I don't think it would be Ospreys and I don't think it would be Dragons. So,
No.
um, yeah. I hope it's not us who's expressed interest in this so far.
Yeah.
I just think from the point of view of looking at the commercial aspect of a club, and I'm not Alan Sugar by any means, but I do work in a business where you've got to make money because you've got to pay for the bums on the seats. 20% for 2.5 million is a piss take when you consider what you could earn through revenue and everything else. So for me, it's a no. I'm not interested. Thanks. We're doing okay as we are.
How
We're
much is
building.
our debt now?
Off the top of
Yes,
my
please.
head, I'm not entirely sure.
Mm.
Um, I know we made a loss of 2 million last year, which in the grand scheme of things in the world of professional sport, whilst it gives me a heart attack, it's not necessarily giving Y11 a heart attack, and they're still putting money in. And are you going to have someone like Y11 who's got stakes in other clubs across the world wanting the Welsh Rugby and Rugby Union tinkering?
No.
What they're suggesting we're doing as player swaps with other clubs that Y11 has got an interest in. And my other worry is what happens to the players that perhaps the coach doesn't have any faith in, like Morgan Morris.
Yeah.
They're gonna get left behind.
Yeah.
I
Mm.
don't want that for
Um,
someone.
no. I mean,
Yeah.
you know my feelings from what I've said already. I mean, I struggled enough to move on from the club rugby structure to the regional structure. It took me about 10 years to get to the point of sort of going on with that or whatever. So the thought of the WAU having that this much control over our club or any other club, I think they need to be focusing more on getting their own house in order. They're not exactly running a terribly viable business themselves anyway.
Sobering thought, isn't it?
And then them then coming on board and potentially running the regions the same as they're running their own business could be absolutely disastrous for all four regions, really. And I
Yeah,
worry about the equity of it as well. As sort of Rod said, clearly from a playing perspective, there's a definite favoritism towards Cardiff at the moment, and you worry what that equity would look like from region to region in
yeah.
terms of playing talent
You know,
and
we
play pool is going to get distributed.
we and Dragons are going to get treated like the ginger step kids at Christmas. You're going to get enough presents, and do you know what I mean? You're not going to get the one to a better phrase. And yeah, okay, you'll have more transparency. And one of the questions was about injury lists as well, which again we can kind of mold into this. Um, a lot of the regions, not just Ospreys, are not too forthcoming with their injury lists and who's on that list long term, short term, what their recovery plans are. Obviously, with Toby, there's a no excuses, no blame culture. But do we think that perhaps the regions, Ospreys included, could be a little bit more transparent with their injury list? I think to a certain extent, if we did accept this proposal, then the Welsh Rugby Union would release this data because who's going on these plans and stuff.
Yeah.
But I would kind of like to know a little bit as a fan who's available in our selection pool for us to pick
I
from.
mean, I'm used to it really. The only annoying element of it for me is the fact that every pre-match and post-match press conference, the first question and the first 5 minutes
Indeed.
is wasted by a journo asking that exact question, who's in, who's out, and then the head coach, be it Toby or whatever head coach for whatever team, just fumbling through trying to remember off the top of the head. I feel like it should just be a standard part of pre-match
Here's
press
your pack.
conferences.
Yeah.
Go in, they've got their sheet, and they just go right off the
Yeah,
bat. These are the ins, these are the outs, um, and we just park it there, and you don't
yeah,
have the follow-up questions, and that's just is what it is. It's this monotonous start of every interview, five
Yeah.
minutes of fumbling through the answers. Um, yeah, that's the only
yeah,
annoying. I'm used to the lack of information. That in itself doesn't bother me really.
yeah,
Because in terms of the injury Saturday, I mean, Toby explained them all immediately afterwards in his post match interview, whatever. He sort of addressed the three main injuries, Conbe, Abota, and Keith. And
yeah,
there's been no word since then, is there? We've heard nothing, in terms of Bota especially. That's a bicep injury. That could be weeks or months out potentially. And the way the scrum's performing at the minute, that's disastrous
yeah,
potential.
worrying.
I know we've got faith in Ben Warren long term, but I think it's pretty clear that he's not ready short term to kind of
Yeah,
step into that starting role now. So, the fact that we've heard nothing on what potentially could be quite a serious injury, and we're now 4 days post game or whatever.
yeah,
Mm.
it is
Yeah, there are
concerning.
exceptional circumstances, aren't there, with big injuries, with big key
Yeah,
players. They know who those are, and they're going to know that the information is wanted.
yeah,
It's all the little bitty stuff that when you've got a player who's been in rehab for 6 months and every week you're getting the same
Hmm.
question and they're giving the same answer.
it's just
Um,
annoying.
it's
Yeah.
just annoying, isn't it? Yeah.
Just annoying. Um, Sadly, this week we lost one of Welsh Rugby's leading lights in Kevin Bowring. Marc, you're of the ages of me where you will remember him coming in 1995 and steering Wales to their first 3 years as their first ever professional
Yeah.
full-time coach. You know, 50% win rate when he was at Wales. And he was a great coach. He's put so much into the sport. So condolences to his friends and his family. Even when he left Welsh Rugby, he moved on to the RFU, and was head of their elite coaching development, and he's stayed in that role until 2016. And he has put so much back into the regions, and continued even after he retired to give coaching advice and support to the younger coaches coming through. Toby had some really nice words about him. And one of the other things that I loved about him is when we were kind of leaking players to rugby league
Yeah.
in the 90s, late 80s and 90s, he also helped those players transition and come back to Union. And so many people have had so many lovely things to say about him. So, we lost a gent of Welsh rugby this week. So, always sad news when we lose
Yeah.
that kind of role within
Like you
within
said,
the
it's been
Welsh rugby
interesting.
family.
It's been interesting to hear all that's happened, post being Wales coach. Because, for us, you had those 5 years as Wales coach or whatever it was.
Yeah,
Pretty average time for Welsh rugby on the whole.
wasn't great.
disruptive time. So, he would go down in history generally as being a sort of a bog standard Welsh coach that had an okay record in a difficult period of Welsh rugby history. But what seems to have come out now
So much more.
posthumously is sort of how many other coaches he's affected,
Yeah.
over the last 20, 25 years, or whatever it's been, since he was Wales coach. And, you know, people, I certainly didn't know a lot of that until that's all come out this week, really. Didn't realize
Mm.
the impact that he was having on so many people. And,
Because he still continued to lecture and everything, because
yeah.
he was a teacher originally. So some lovely stuff has come out about him. Um, Foxy's obviously retired this week as well, from rugby, which is not surprising, seeing as he was training by himself and didn't have a club to go to. Again, another great servant of Welsh rugby, and
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of meeting him a few times. Really nice fella, really, really lovely fella. That Lions tour that he was on with Jamie Roberts, and that partnership was something else. So we'll, remember him
And there was still Leinster fans
fondly.
getting salty about that online this week. Even as he announced his sort of retirement, there were still people going about O'Driscoll and the Lions tour
Oh,
and whatever, and how he was robbed. And I thought, for goodness sake.
oh no,
Number
Mm.
one, we
no,
won the match and won the series, and number two,
yeah, like give over, give yourself a break.
And didn't
Um,
Foxy get player of the series,
I think
players
this
player
year,
of the
did,
series
yeah.
that series?
He's
So
just a
yeah, that
genuinely nice
argument doesn't
fella.
float.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Genuinely nice fella.
Yeah, what a friend
Um,
we had as well.
yeah.
Oh God, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and the other thing which I quickly seen before we came on was talks of Montpellier approaching Ospreys about
Mm.
Adam Beard. Wow, some of the fans online, guys, you need to do better on social media. Some of the comments about him are rude, quite frankly, rude. And I think he's one of those that he's understated. And I think it would be a loss. I think that is something that will develop more over the next couple of days so that we can possibly, talk about that in greater detail, because it's literally only come to light today. So I've not seen a great deal about it. But like one of the fans said, oh, he's got a pending court case coming then, is he? Like, well, what's that got to do with the price of rice? Like, give over. So, for me personally, I think it would be a loss. He's understated with what he does. I don't know if you agree, or not.
Interestingly enough, I was looking at stats. Simon Thomas put out the top performers across the first 4 weeks of the
Yeah.
URC this afternoon, and Beard is the top line out performer in terms of
Mm.
line out one across the 4 rounds of the URC so far this season.
Yeah.
So for us, he is the line out to an
Yeah.
extent.
Yeah. Thoughts, Rod?
Yeah, I mean, I was never anticipating keeping the likes of Dewi, Jack, Beard, Gartom, Owen Watkin, all of these big names going on, going into the future. We're
Mm.
always going to lose a couple when their contracts came to an end and the big wealthy teams came knocking. So it was something that was, on my radar as coming down the line. So it's not surprising. Maybe a bit more surprising that, these stories are coming out midway through the season now.
Mm.
But he's been a great servant to the club. If he does choose to go elsewhere, again, never going to hold that against a player.
No.
He's got to act with his own, best interests in
Whole
mind. So
career.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he's given so many years to us. Good luck for him, whatever decision he makes and whatever offers come his way. As long as we can keep a couple of those big names
Yeah.
and set some money aside for the
Yeah.
eventuality that somebody comes knocking for
Yeah.
Jack and Dewi, um,
Totally
then
pissed
all
off.
good. Then all
Not in.
good. We've got locks coming through that look like potential Wales starters. So, and when Rhys Davies comes back as well, he's another phenomenal player who has that sort of rugby intellect and that experience to bring through the youngsters. So
Yeah.
no, it'd be a massive shame. Quality operator doesn't get the credit he often
No.
deserves. Um, but whatever's best for him.
Yeah. So that's kind of it for our breaking news and our questions. Thank you once again. Same people sending questions through. Edward, Nick Williams, Husey, thank you so much for sending those questions. Now, this is the time where I would normally be putting the fear of God up into Rhodri and going rando. However, I want to be a little bit more serious tonight, guys. And I want to not have a rando question, but I want to have a bit of a Sam talk, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
Now, I love Instagram, love TikTok, bit of a love-hate relationship with Facebook. We all know I think Twitter, stroke X, is a cesspit of humanity. Um, and for me, this weekend has shown me just how toxic some rugby fans are. And it's my pet hate. My pet hate is rudeness. Do not be rude to me. Don't mistake the banter, the curls, the blue eyes for being nice. That's not me. If you are rude to me, I will be rude back, and my rude will outrude your rude, and I will make you cry. And that is a Sam promise. And I've seen some stuff this week that is quite frankly horrible. And I would really hope that none of our listeners and our viewers take part in any of this shithousery on social media. Just before we recorded this, Squidge Rugby, who is someone I've got a lot of time for, I followed and I've spoken to, over the years, is taking a break from social media as a result of a comment that he made on the weekend about DuPont against Cheslin Colbert with point scoring and everything else. Some of the stuff that he has had sent to him is horrible, absolutely horrible. Now, you don't need to comment. Nobody needs to comment. You can just scroll on past, you can block, you can move on. And some of it displayed quite toxic masculinity as well, about saying, some stuff about Welshmen being able to man up and blah, blah, blah. Nonsense, like absolutely nonsense. Me, I made a comment about Creel's red card on Saturday. Oh my God. You would think that I'd murdered a puppy on Christmas Day with a shotgun. I was called a knob, a stupid whatever. Get a grip, it's a game. It is not that deep. It's not that deep. So for me, my TED talk is just be kind online. If you don't like it, you don't have to get personal. And I think that's where some of the stuff said to Squidge has fallen. He's happy to have a debate with you. I'm happy to have a debate with you. When it starts getting personal, it's not nice. And I draw the line at that. So I want to say to Squidge, I'm sending you lots of love. Please don't leave social media because of some idiots out there. And the other thing that's really disappointed me this week is that we live in 2024. The fact that we've still got to have an inclusivity weekend across the LGBTIA spectrum worries me. But what worries me even more is on the URC banter page, you've got people talking absolute nonsense and being quite homophobic. And I have absolutely loved people coming to the defence of their fellow rugby fans and saying, this is not okay, we don't agree with this, you don't need to post such homophobic stuff. So Sam's TED talk this week is be kind to each other online. You don't know what people are going through in their personal life. Squidge has openly said his mental health is taking an absolute battering. Nobody deserves that. And I'll leave you with a quote by that great 21st century poet, T. Swift. If you say it in the streets, it's a knockout. If you say it in a tweet, it's a cop-out. Don't be prepared to post online what you wouldn't say to someone's face in real life. I think we can all agree with that. But we'll end the TED talk. So we now know Sam's pet hate is talking shit on social media and being rude.
Yeah.
And on that serious note, what's your choose pet hates? We will go with a rando.
You're up first, Mark.
Oh, really? I didn't get in quick enough, didn't I? Do you know, it is down to manners again. motorists who don't thank you. If you sort of stop and let somebody out, or
Yeah,
you kind of, you know, let somebody overtake or whatever, or, just aggressive motorists with no manners, let's say.
agreed. Indicators are a legal requirement, not an optional
Absolutely.
fun extra.
Yeah.
Well, I just had my MOT today and I failed on a number of issues,
Oh God,
um, including things that the guys down at my local garage worked on within the last 6 months.
Oh,
Um,
raging.
so so tapping in
Mechanics.
to the motorist theme, yeah, it's mechanics who quote you work, charge you for it, do it just for the same issue to go wrong in 6 months' time and for you to fail your MOT.
Raging.
Um,
Well,
yeah.
thank you very much. To be honest, I also poked the bear today as well on Twitter because someone posted what the hell you're prepared to die on your unpopular opinion, and I made the epic mistake of saying the Beatles are overrated. Oh my God,
no.
don't do that. Like literally, no, the Beatles and the Oasis fans are kind
Oh,
of crazy. Um, but I know I got a little bit serious about social media, but I hate to see anybody being bullied. It kind of really annoys me. I'm
oh,
Yeah.
well
five
said.
foot two and I'm scrappy.
Yeah, well said.
Um,
And
so
Squidge can dish it out with the best of them, but in his nice, well-mannered way. There's space for banter and having a bit of a piss take at the expense of, your
that's
opposition,
fine.
but not at the expense of, yeah, people's mental health and,
Like
just enjoyment of the
literally,
sport and the space. Yeah.
some of the stuff that I had sent to me on Saturday night was absolutely hilarious. And
Mm.
because it was on my pod Twitter, I didn't do my default, which was
Yeah.
I was being nice. But yeah, I was called Knob was my favourite one because I'm a girl and I blatantly don't have one. As much as I'd love one for a day to know what it was like, I don't actually have one. But yeah, telling me was stupid. I didn't know what was going on. Need to grow up. Need to learn the rules of
Mhm.
rugby.
Yeah.
They're not rules, mate. They're laws. So get it right. Um, but oh yeah, stop doing hard drugs. I haven't done that since
Yeah.
1996, mate. Leave me be. But it is absolute madness. But
And
let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya next week.
Sounds good.
You know,
yeah, and that URC banter page on Facebook is one of the worst. It's like the Twitter of Facebook. It's horrible in there. And I've got particular gripe because they banned us from sharing our podcast on their page. I didn't request admin authorization or something like
oh
that.
God,
So
you're so
we are banned.
naughty. Yeah.
We don't need them, love.
So no.
But I'd like to say as well, Dara, well done, young lad, for the post that you made on there about sport being sport and everybody being welcome. You're
Yeah.
16, keep it up. I love that attitude. Everybody's welcome in rugby, size, sex, nationality. If you identify as a penguin, a pigeon, whatever, I'll take you as an Ospreys fan. You'll be my buddy, you'll be my mate. We're rugby fans, we're better than that. But gosh, a really long pod today, guys, but we have had a lot to talk about and Marc's been back.
Yeah, it's my
Um,
fault, of
and
course.
I've loved Marc being back. Thank you for coming back. Um, so all the usual rules apply. Get your questions, your thoughts, your comments into us. Always love hearing from you. Oh, I forgot. You guys know, but those guys don't know. I was recognised on Saturday through the pod by none other than Keith from Leaf's mum and dad. I was in Rossi's eating my chips. And his dad stopped me and said he loves the podcast. They really enjoy listening to it. I had a selfie, I put it on my Insta as well. Really, really
Nice.
lovely. They were really complimentary and they looked really pleased to meet me, which considering I'm a dickhead, I was quite like, I was really happy with that. So I told you I'd give you a shout out, guys. Keith's mum and dad. Um, Keith's mum and dad. Keith's not his real name. Sam, what are you thinking? Keith from Nice, Mum and Dad, thank you very much for stopping me. You've genuinely made my night. Thank you for saying I was lovely. And the other thing that really made me happy on Saturday as well was Deevesy came up to the lounge to have a chat with us, and I'm a chunker. He had a green jacket there that me and Rod like. I think it was an XL or a double XL, and I was feeling the jacket. And he went, "Go on, love, try it on." I'm really flattered. He thought I would fit in it. I was like, oh, so I had a good day Saturday on those two fronts other than that. But completely forgot all about that until now. But guys, pleasure as always. Rod will shove our banner up with all our socials. Keep interacting. Keep asking us. If you see any of us, ask us for a selfie. We're more than happy. Or I might ask you for a selfie, to be honest. Like, subscribe. Enjoy the game on Friday. May the odds be ever in our favour. Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.